I want you to close your eyes for a second. Just picture this. You're standing in a room.
Okay.
It's this massive map room. High ceilings, the smell of old paper, maybe some heavy mahogany furniture. And right in the center, on this huge oak table, is a chart.
The root square chart.
Exactly. The root square chart. And it's perfect. I mean, breathtakingly perfect. Every single aspect of a human life is organized on this piece of paper.
Right.
You've got the root right at the center, the ultimate purpose. And then you have the branches extending out, your capabilities, your health, your career.
All mapped out.
All of it. Then the leaves, your specific skills. And finally, the fruits, the actual daily actions. And everything connects. Every line is perfectly straight. The geometry is just flawless. It's a masterpiece of architectural design.
It's the perfect blueprint of a human life. It's what everyone thinks they want.
Right. It's the ultimate destination.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. You're standing there looking at this absolute perfection, and you don't feel accomplished. You don't feel happy. You feel cold. You feel this intense dread.
Yeah.
It feels mechanical. It feels dead.
And this is the scene that opens chapter 5. It's such a jarring place to start because, we've spent the last 2 deep dives talking about building this exact structure.
Yeah, we've been hyping it up.
We have. And now the text opens with the traveler, our protagonist, standing before the completed work and realizing it's a mausoleum.
It's the paradox of completeness. And I really want to pause on that because it sounds like a contradiction. We're told our whole lives that completeness is the goal, right? If I complete the project, I win. If I complete the checklist, I'm productive. If I complete the degree, I'm smart. Why is completeness a paradox? Why does it feel like death?
Because in the context of human architecture, and frankly, just in biology, what is the only thing that is truly finished?
A corpse.
Exactly.
Well.
A corpse. A machine is finished. A statue is finished. But a living system is a terrifying mess of flux. It is never finished.
Right.
The paradox is that the moment you build a system that perfectly accounts for every single minute of your day, you have built a cage. You've optimized the serendipity completely out of your existence.
That is actually terrifying. It reminds me of those productivity gurus online, the ones?
Mm-hmm.
They have their day mapped down to the 15-minute increment in some massive spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah, the color-coded nightmare.
Exactly. And it looks so impressive on screen. It's incredibly seductive. But whenever I actually try to do it, I physically feel like I'm suffocating by day 3.
That's because you're confusing the map with the territory. A map is static. It has to be static to be useful. But the territory, your actual life, is wild. It changes, it storms, it grows. If you never leave the map room because the map is so beautiful and safe, you aren't a traveler anymore.
What are you then?
You're a curator. You're just a museum guard for your own potential.
A museum guard for your own potential. Man, that is a haunting image.
That is the crisis of transition. We are moving from building the structure to actually living it. And the question we have to answer today is why perfectly planned lives often feel lifeless. And more importantly, how do we fix that?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling The Architect of Life, Part 3. We're going deep into chapters U through X. And I have to say, just looking at the source material, this is where things get really weird.
Weird is good. Weird means we're finally leaving the shallow end.
We are definitely leaving the construction site, the habits, the systems, all that basic stuff. And we're entering a section the text calls metamatics.
Yes, metamatics.
Now, I'm going to stop you right there because my alarm bells immediately started ringing when I read that. You use the word metamatics, and honestly, when I hear people try to apply math to human emotions or spiritual growth, it usually sounds like, pseudo-intellectual fluff.
I get that.
It sounds like we're trying to make self-help sound scientific just to sell books. Is there actually math here, or is this just a really fancy metaphor?
That is a completely fair critique. And if this were just about drawing graphs to feel smart, I'd agree with you. It would be totally useless. But I want you to think about music for a second. Music is pure emotion, right? It makes you cry, it makes you dance, it breaks your heart.
Sure. It's visceral. It hits you in the gut.
But underneath the music, if you strip away the feeling, what is it? It is rigorously mathematical.
Oh, absolutely.
It's frequency, it's rhythm, it's intervals, it's a 4/4 times signature. It's the exact ratio of a major third versus a minor third. You cannot have the jazz without the math. Metamatics isn't about reducing you to a number. It's about understanding the notation of your own patterns so you can play them better.
Okay, by the music analogy. So we're basically looking for the sheet music of the soul.
In a way, yes. We are looking for the grammar of reality. Chapter U introduces this. It argues that transformation isn't just about trying harder, it operates via very specific operators. If you don't understand the operators, you are trying to play a symphony by banging on the piano keys with your fists.
So let's look at this sheet music. Chapter U introduces the 6 fundamental operators. Again, I was super skeptical at first. I saw symbols, circles with plus signs, circles with X's. I thought, here we go, algebra for the soul. But then I started reading the actual definitions, and I realized this is entirely about relationships.
And it is exclusively about relationships. Look, in standard arithmetic, 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's linear, it's additive, it has reliability. But in human transformation, 1 plus 1 rarely equals 2. Sometimes it equals 0.
Yeah.
Sometimes it equals a massive catastrophe. Sometimes it equals infinity. The operators describe exactly how elements interact with each other.
Let's walk through them, because if we don't get these right, the rest of this deep dive won't make any sense. The first one is the circle with the plus sign inside it, the synthesis operator.
The magic operator. And this is probably the most misunderstood concept in personal growth. We tend to think growth is additive. I have a skill, I add another skill, now I have 2 skills. That's just addition. Synthesis is entirely different.
Okay, hold on. I need to push back on this. You're saying synthesis is different from addition. But in the real world, isn't getting better just about adding skills. I learned to code. I add that to our resume. I learned Spanish. I add that. Why do we need a special symbol for this? Why complicate it?
Because addition is linear and flat. If you have a pile of bricks and you add more bricks, what do you have?
A bigger pile of bricks.
Right. You just have more of the exact same thing. That's addition. But think about baking. You have flour, eggs, sugar, and heat. If you just add them to a pile on the kitchen counter, what do you have?
A mess. A
Yeah.
sticky, unusable mess.
Exactly. You have a mess. But if you synthesize them, if you mix them and apply heat, you don't get hot flour and eggs, you get a cake. The cake is a fundamentally different state of matter than the flour. That is the synthesis operator. It represents a chemical change, not just a collection of parts.
I see. So addition keeps the parts separate. Synthesis creates a totally new whole.
Correct. The source material uses the hydrogen and oxygen analogy, which is a classic for a reason. Hydrogen is a gas. It's highly flammable. Oxygen is a gas, also flammable. You stack them next to each other, which is addition, and you just have a massive fire hazard.
Right.
But you bond them, you synthesize them, and you get water. You get wetness. Wetness didn't exist in the hydrogen. It didn't exist in the oxygen. It is a completely emergent property.
So applying this to a career or just a life, the collector approach is just getting more certificates.
Yeah.
The synthesizer approach is, what does that actually look like?
It's the person who studies computer science and then goes and studies biology. If they just add them, they are a coder who happens to know some random biology facts. But if they synthesize them, they create bioinformatics. They create an entirely new field. They aren't just stacking skills, they are breeding them to create a completely new capability.
That distinction alone explains so much about why people get stuck. They're hoarding the parts, but they never get the water. They have all the ingredients sitting on the counter, but they never actually turn on the oven.
Precisely. And that leads us directly to the second operator, which explains how these synthesized skills actually impact the real world. The circle with the X inside. Amplification.
The multiplier.
The multiplier. This describes elements that reinforce each other, and this is where the math gets genuinely ruthless. In a multiplication equation, if one variable is 0, what is the result?
0.
0. It doesn't matter if the other number is a billion. A billion times 0 is 0.
That is a really harsh reality check.
Think about professional competence multiplied by connectivity. You can be the most competent person in the entire room. A level 10 competence. You are an absolute genius. You know everything. But if your connectivity, your ability to relate to others, to share ideas, to just not be insufferable is 0. 10 times 0 is 0. Your actual impact on the world is 0.
That is the classic brilliant jerk problem. Or the unrecognized genius sitting in the basement complaining that nobody understands them.
Exactly. But here is where it gets empowering. If you have even a level 3 connectivity, suddenly 10 times 3 is 30, you've amplified your impact massively just by bumping that 0 up to a 3. This operator teaches us to look for the multipliers. Don't just obsess over adding more competence. Look for the variable that is currently a 0 and fix it.
It's pure leverage.
It is the ultimate leverage.
All right, let's hit the third one. And this is the one that I think is going to hurt some feelings. It certainly hurt mine when I first read it. The circle with the slash. Constraint. The limiter. Or, in the specific language of mathematics, the delineator. It acts as A divisor.
The denominator.
Right, the bottom of the fraction.
Yeah.
Let's look at the actual math of frustration here. Let's say you have an innovation score of 100. You are brilliant. You wake up with ideas. You are a Ferrari engine of creativity.
I really like this version of me.
Enjoy while it lasts, because you work in a company that requires 3 separate signatures just to buy a stapler.
Okay.
Let's give that bureaucracy a score of 50. Now do the math. 100 divided by 50.
2. Your output, what actually hits the world, is a 2. You feel like a 100 inside. Your internal engine is screaming, but the world only sees a 2.
That is tragic. And the mistake we make, the tragedy of the 2, is that we always try to fix the numerator. We try to become a 150.
Exactly. You take night classes, you drink way more coffee, you sleep less, you push that 100 to a 200. You literally kill yourself to double your internal capacity. And what is 200 divided by 50?
4.
4. You nearly destroyed yourself to go from a 2 to a 4. Nobody in the world even notices the difference. That is the exact mathematical definition of burnout. Extremely high effort, incredibly low yield.
So the smart move, the engineer's move, isn't to push the engine, it's to attack the denominator.
Reduce the bureaucracy. If you can get the bureaucracy down from 50 to just a 1, then 100 divided by 1 is 100. You haven't become more creative, you haven't learned a single new thing, but your output has jumped 50-fold purely by removing the constraint.
I feel like we could do an entire deep dive just on that one concept. Stop trying to be better, start fixing the denominator. That's the bumper sticker right there.
It's easily the most efficient move in the entire game of life.
Okay, operator number 4. The circle with the dot in the middle. Resonance.
The aligner. This is all about frequency. When two things share the exact same vibration, the text uses the example of creative work resonating with professional work.
This is the holy grail for most people, right? When your job is your art.
Yes, but it's much more subtle than that. It's not just that cliche of doing what you love. It's when the underlying values of one domain actually support the values of another. It's when your physical vitality resonates with your relationship energy. They aren't fighting for your attention. They are humming at the exact same pitch. When you have resonance, friction just disappears.
And the opposite of that, or maybe the necessary counterpart to it, is the circle with the dash. Tension.
Productive polarity. We often think tension is a bad thing. We want to relax. We want zero tension in our lives. But structurally speaking, you need tension. A suspension bridge stands up purely because of tension. A guitar string makes music because of tension. If a guitar string is completely relaxed, what sound does it make?
Thwump. Just nothing.
Exactly, no music at all. The text gives a beautiful formula for this. Effort minus restoration. You need them pulling against each other. If you have only effort, you snap the string. That's burnout. If you have only restoration, the string is loose. That's atrophy. You need them pulling in opposite directions to create what the text calls sustainable momentum.
So the tension operator tells us not to try to eliminate the polarity. Manage the tension so it sings.
Precisely. It changes the way you look at stress. Stress isn't necessarily a bug in the system, it's just the tension on the string. Too much and it snaps, too little and it's silent. It's about tuning the instrument, not just blindly cutting the strings.
And finally, the 6th one, the circle with the equal sign inside. Dependency.
The prerequisite. This is logical sequencing. You absolutely cannot install the roof before you pour the foundation.
It sounds super obvious, like duh.
It sounds obvious, but in personal development, people violate this constantly. They want mastery before foundation. They want to run an ultramarathon before they can even walk around the block without wheezing. They want to be a CEO before they learn to manage their own morning routine.
It's that hack mentality. We are totally obsessed with life hacks, and a hack is basically just an attempt to skip the dependency chain.
And the math just says, syntax error. You cannot compute variable B if variable A is completely missing. The entire system just crashes.
So if we step back for a second, what this chapter U gives us is a diagnostic dashboard. If I'm feeling stuck in my life, I don't just sit there and say, I suck or the universe hates me. I look at the equation. Is it a constraint problem? Is it a lack of resonance? Is it a missing dependency?
Exactly. It turns vague, overwhelming emotional distress into a clear engineering problem. And engineering problems can be solved. Vague emotional distress usually just spirals out of control.
But, and here's where the skeptic in me comes roaring back.
Yeah.
Life is messy. We can have these beautiful equations. We can have the absolute perfect root square chart. You can understand all 6 operators flawlessly. But then Tuesday happens.
Tuesday always happens.
You wake up, you've got the flu, the kids are screaming, the car won't start, Your boss calls with a massive emergency. The beautiful map says, gym for 60 minutes, high intensity. Reality says, no chance in hell.
This is exactly where the skeptic in the text actually intervenes. He calls it static chart syndrome. The extreme danger of thinking the chart is the reality. And this leads us to one of the most practical and frankly relieving concepts in this entire deep dive, Chapter V and adaptive fidelity.
Adaptive fidelity.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this term because usually when we blow up our plan for the day, we just feel massive guilt. We feel like we failed the map. We look at that perfect chart we talked about in the intro and we feel like we betrayed it.
That is because we are completely confusing form with function. We get obsessed with the leaf, the highly specific action, like a 60-minute heavy lifting session. But we entirely forget the function. Why are we doing it in the first place? We are doing it for movement, for mental decompression, for metabolic health.
So walk us through the workout example from the text, because I think literally everyone listening has lived this exact scenario.
Okay. So the leaf on your chart says workout. The reality is you are dead exhausted, it's pouring rain outside, and you only have 20 minutes before a mandatory meeting.
Been there.
The rigid approach, which is the trap, says, well, I can't do the perfect 60 minutes, so I will do nothing. And then you immediately add a terrible variable to the mix. Guilt. So the actual equation becomes 0 workout plus guilt. You end up physically stagnant and emotionally drained.
That is the default mode for so many of us.
Yeah.
All or nothing. If I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all, and then I'll hate myself for it.
But adaptive fidelity asks a different question. What is the function? The function is to move and to connect with my body today. So the adaptive approach says, I have 15 minutes, I will stretch, and I will do some deep breathing.
And the text gives us a highly specific equation for this. I want to break this down because it's brilliant. It's the number 1 over walking times listening minus guilt plus presence.
I want you to visualize this equation literally floating in the air right now. We're going to build it from left to right. First, we have the action itself. Let's call it a fraction. The numerator is a 1. That's you. You show it.
Okay, I'm the one. I'm there.
The denominator is the action, walking. Very simple. But we are multiplying that walk by listening. Maybe you're listening to your body, maybe to the birds, maybe just the sound of your own breathing. So the core block is simple. You are walking and you are listening. Now, usually right next to that beautiful, simple block, we have a massive toxic variable written in bold red letters, minus guilt.
Yeah. I should be lifting heavy. I should be sweating way more than this. I'm being weak today. That internal monologue just subtracts from the value of the walk.
It doesn't just subtract, it can easily turn the whole value negative. If the guilt is high enough, you actually leave the walk feeling physiologically worse than when you started. Cortisol is spiked. But adaptive fidelity takes a giant eraser to that equation. It wipes out the minus guilt completely, and in its exact place, it writes plus presence. So now the math is just the walk, just the listening, plus the incredible feeling of actually being there in the moment.
And the text argues, and I know this is the controversial part for the hardcore optimization crowd, that this modified version is mathematically superior.
The mathematical proof here is stunning. A 10-minute modified workout done with deep presence is mathematically superior to a skipped perfect workout, which is obvious, but, and this is the vital key, it is also vastly superior to a 60-minute heavy workout done with resentment.
That last part is the real kicker. A 60-minute workout done with resentment. I have definitely done that. I'm at the gym. I'm furious that I have to be there. I'm obsessively checking my phone between sets. I'm hating every single second of my existence. I'm doing the mathematically perfect action on paper, but my internal energy is totally toxic.
And in the formal notation of mathematics, that resentment is a negative multiplier. It degrades the fundamental value of the action. You are checking the box, but you are slowly poisoning the system. Adaptive fidelity says the map allows walking to shape the traveler, but the weather filters the walking. You adapt the form to preserve the deep intent.
This just feels like such a massive permission slip.
It's really not permission to be lazy, though. It's permission to be intelligent.
Yeah.
It is high fidelity to the ultimate goal, but extremely low fidelity to the specific daily tactic.
Okay, so we've got the operators, we've got adaptive fidelity. We're actually navigating the map now. But now we move to the part of the text that honestly blew my mind. This is the philosophical climax of the whole thing. Chapters W and X. The dissolution of structure.
This is where we burn the map.
Because usually, self-help tells you to build the structure and guard it with your life forever.
Right.
Keep the habit tracker going until you die. Optimize every morning routine until you're in the grave. This text says destroy it.
Not destroy, dissolve. There's a massive difference. This is the exact difference between a beginner and a true master. Think of a massive scaffolding around a skyscraper under construction. You absolutely need the scaffolding. You cannot build the building without it. It is essential.
Right. The workers need to stand somewhere. Materials have to be hoisted up.
But if the building is completely finished, the glass is in, the lights are on, the lobby is open, and you just leave the scaffolding up, what is it?
It's an eyesore. It blocks the whole view of the architecture.
It becomes a cage. It becomes a prison. Stages 10 and 11 of the transformation arc are all about taking down the scaffolding. It is the profound shift from knowledge about a thing to knowledge as the thing.
Explain that distinction a bit more. Knowledge about versus knowledge as.
Think about when you are first learning to drive a manual transmission car. You have knowledge about the car. Hands at 10 and 2. Check the rear view mirror. Ease off the clutch while gently pressing the gas. You are literally consulting a mental chart every single second. You are constantly thinking about driving. But when you have driven that same car for 20 years, you are the driving. You don't ask, what do I do with my left foot now? You just flow. The car is literally an extension of your own nervous system.
The text has this great line. You stop consulting the chart.
Mm-hmm.
You don't ask, what is my leaf today? You just wake up and do it because you are it.
Exactly. The ultimate final goal of the root square chart is to completely render itself obsolete. If you are still obsessing over your daily maturity scores in year 5 of this process, you have entirely failed. You are trapped in the map room. Mastery is unconscious competence. It's the jazz musician who knows the underlying theory so incredibly well. They know every scale, every mode, the entire circle of fifths that they can walk on stage, completely forget it, and just play pure art.
But if they completely forget it, how do they actually play? Don't they need the structure?
They don't forget it in the sense of losing the information like amnesia. They metabolize it. It physically moves from the analytical frontal cortex down into the deep nervous system. The rigid structure completely dissolves into fluid behavior.
But when that scaffolding falls away, when the beautiful paper chart is finally gone, what is actually left to guide you? How do we steer the ship? The text introduces this life direction equation in Chapter X. It's like the unifying formula that remains when the paper is finally burned. Target plus truth plus totally, all divided by title.
Yes, this is the ultimate source code. This is what you are left with. Let's really unpack these variables because this is the code you run your entire life by when the training wheels finally come off. First, target. Where are you actually aiming? And the math here is brutally specific. Target equals desire minus inherited goals.
Inherited goals. Man, that hits so hard.
It does, because most of us are aiming at targets our parents gave us or that society handed to us. Get the promotion, buy the big suburban house, have 2.5 kids. Those are all inherited. If you don't aggressively subtract the inherited goals, your target is mathematically false. You are spending your life climbing a mountain you don't even actually want to be on.
That is a brutally hard subtraction to do. You have to look in the mirror and admit that maybe you don't actually want the thing you've been aggressively chasing for a decade.
It requires a massive amount of courage, which perfectly leads to the second variable, truth. Truth is defined in the text as operational beliefs minus stated beliefs.
What's the difference there? Stated versus operational.
You might state to the world, I deeply believe in work-life balance. You tell your friends that at dinner. You tweet about it constantly. But your operational belief, the one that actually drives your behavior when the pressure's on at 9 p.m. on a Friday is, I am only worthy if I am totally exhausted. The equation absolutely demands you solve for the operational belief. You cannot graph a fantasy. If your operational belief is, I am garbage unless I am working, then your system will relentlessly produce work no matter what your stated goals say.
Oof. I am only worthy if I am exhausted. I feel personally called out by that one. I think a lot of listeners just felt that one right in their gut. Okay, third variable, totally.
This is the raw level of commitment. Are you all in or are you hedging your bets? Mathematically speaking, hedging is a fraction. If you are 50% committed to a path, you are literally multiplying your life force by 0.5. You are having your own power before you even take the first step. Totally means the multiplier is a 1, there is no leakage, the pipes are completely sealed.
So we have a mathematically true target, deeply backed by operational truth with total commitment. That sounds incredibly powerful. But then, of course, there is a denominator. There is a divisor.
Always the denominator.
Divided by title.
This is the identity story you are currently living inside. The victim, the martyr, the struggling artist, the good soldier.
How does a title act as a divisor in the equation?
Think about it carefully. If your title is The Victim, it acts as a massive divisor. It might literally act as a divide by infinity. No matter how much target or truth you have on top of the fraction, if you filter it all through the victim, the output is massively diminished. The victim cannot hold actual power. The victim transforms every opportunity to a new grievance. If your title is The Smartest Guy in the Room, you divide your potential by your complete inability to learn from anyone else. The title is the absolute filter through which all your energy must eventually pass.
So the goal is to just change the title, find a better one.
Or to remove the title entirely, to just become the architect. Or simply the traveler, a title that is totally expansive, not constrictive. When you align target, truth, and totally, and you radically minimize the drag of a limiting title, life direction isn't something you have to agonizingly figure out on a whiteboard. It emerges completely naturally. You don't force the river, you just remove the dam.
This brings us right to the edge, the danger zone of this whole philosophy. Chapter Z hints at this concept of the trap of the map. We've touched on it a bit, but I really want to go deeper. Because there is a very specific intellectual seduction in this level of detail. I mean, we are talking about mathematics, complex charts, operators, variables. It is so easy to get high on the system itself.
It is the ultimate form of procrastination. It is productive procrastination taken to a totally metaphysical level. You can literally spend years refining your root square chart. You can endlessly debate whether a specific morning habit is an amplifier or a catalyst. You can perfect the visual notation. You can have the most beautiful aesthetic journal on Instagram. And meanwhile, your actual life is quietly burning down around you.
It's static chart syndrome, thinking the chart is the territory.
The text heavily references this Alan Watts moment. The map is not the territory. You cannot get wet by staring at the word water. You cannot get drunk by reading the word wine. And you cannot transform by obsessing over the word transformation. The operators, the symbols, they are just fingers pointing at the moon. They are not the moon itself. If you find yourself loving the map more than the actual messy journey, you are deeply in the trap. You have become the gatekeeper of your own life, locking yourself completely out of the human experience.
So how do we break out of that? Because I'll be honest, I love charts. I love the safety of a perfect plan. How do I know when it's time to finally burn it?
There's this powerful idea of the inversion kick. Sometimes you lead with structure, which is the chart. You say, I will do X because the chart dictates it. That is discipline. That is totally necessary in the beginning phases. But sometimes you must invert. You lead with intuition. You look at the paper and say, the chart says X, but my soul is screaming Y. I am doing Y today.
That sounds incredibly risky.
It is risky. That's exactly why it's called living. The ultimate goal of all of this is freedom from the framework, achieved through the framework. You build the incredibly rigid structure so you can eventually trust yourself enough to abandon it. It's like the jazz musician again. You learn the rigid scales so that on stage you can break the scales, and it sounds like breathtaking art, not just random noise. If you break the scales before you actually learn them, it's just chaotic noise.
Freedom from the framework, achieved through the framework. That is the absolute key. You don't just skip straight to the freedom. That's just chaos. You have to earn the freedom.
Exactly right. You earn the right to burn the map.
Okay, we are coming to the end of this deep dive, and we always want to leave you, the listener, with something to actively do. Not just something cool to think about, but an actual operation to run in your own life. And looking at this material, specifically the constraint operator, I think there's an incredibly powerful challenge here.
The constraint challenge. This is easily the highest leverage move you can make right now. If you do nothing else from this entire conversation, do this.
Walk us through it step by step.
Okay, step 1. Identify a specific area in your life where you are iterating hard but getting incredibly low emergence. In plain English, where are you trying really, really hard but seeing almost zero results?
Maybe it's your career. You're grinding 60 hours a week, but not moving up the ladder. Maybe it's dating. You're going on 100 first dates, but feeling absolutely no real connection. Maybe it's fitness. You're starving yourself on a diet, but not losing any weight.
Right. The entirely natural instinct in that moment of frustration is to just increase the iterator. I'll work 70 hours. I'll go on 200 dates. I'll eat even less. Stop. Step 2. Stop trying to quote-unquote try harder. Step 3. Closely examine the equation and look for the delineator. The denominator. Look for the constraint. Map it out exactly. My capacity divided by the constraint equals frustration.
What are some examples of constraints people might totally miss? Because usually the constraint is completely invisible to us while we're in it.
It could easily be an environment. I am trying to be sober, but I hang out in bars every Friday. The bar is the constraint. You can have a willpower score of 100, but if the environment is a constraint of 100, you are fighting a mathematically losing battle. It could be a title. I am trying to be a strong leader, but my internal title is the one who desperately needs approval. That intense need for approval divides your leadership power by 10 every single time you speak. It could be a total lack of resonance. I'm trying to sell this product, but I secretly believe it's garbage. The deep lack of belief is the massive constraint.
So the core goal is don't try to fix yourself. Fix the mathematical equation.
Exactly. Remove the constraint entirely, or at least alter it. If you change the denominator from a 10, which is high resistance, to a 1, which is zero resistance, your real-world results will absolutely explode, and you achieve that without working even 1% harder. That is true engineering. That is metamatics in actual action.
That is the real aha moment.
Yeah.
We spend our entire lives blindly pushing the boulder up the steepest hill. Metamatics just stops and asks, why is the hill so steep? Can we just flatten the hill?
And that beautifully brings us to the final thought, the outro of the text. We've talked a whole lot about the self today, the architect, the traveler. It can all start to sound very hyper-individualistic. My chart, my life, my personal optimization. But chapters 9 and X bring in the massive concept of the paradox of individuality and unity.
Right. By intensely tending to your own personal architecture, are you just being selfish? Are you just endlessly navel-gazing?
The math emphatically says no, because you are a fractal node in a massive network. When you apologize sincerely to someone, that is a personal optimization. That is you fixing your own truth variable. But what does it actually do? It creates a massive ripple of accountability throughout your entire family. When you regulate your own nervous system, you automatically become a calm anchor for your chaotic workplace. You literally lower the constraint for everyone else in the room. By meticulously tending to your position of 1, you are actively stabilizing the entire network. The text says, you are not the destination. You are the bridge. Build the architecture so you can get over it.
Build the architecture so you can get over it. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that framing. You are building this elaborate bridge to a better version of yourself, but eventually you have to cross the bridge and just keep walking into the unknown.
And you leave the strong bridge there for others to use. That is the actual legacy.
This has been a truly massive download today. We've gone from dead, rigid charts to living synthesis, from toxic guilt to the freedom of adaptive fidelity. We've learned the actual grammar of becoming. To all the travelers out there listening,
Yeah.
stop forcing it. Start engineering it.
Yeah.
Check your denominators. And for God's sake, do not live your whole life inside the map room.
Go explore the actual territory.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Safe travels out there.